Hello, Leo, and welcome to your basically bi-weekly reading. So this is for the new to full moon. It is a special reading because we are, I'm feeling the top one, because we are also having a solar eclipse with this new moon, and we also have Mercury going retrograde at the end of the week. So, or basically on the 21st. So we're doing a little bit of a different spread. This reading is for Leo rising or Leo sun sign. It's a collective reading. So normally these readings are about, for the moon readings, they're about 5 to 8 minutes-ish. But these are a little bit longer because I just felt like, let's pull some extra cards for everything that's going on. So for my Leos, we're also taking a look at what is, I'm just feeling that card there. We're taking a look at the seeds that are being planted for this particular phase, because even though we have the eclipse and even though we have Mercury going retrograde, that doesn't mean that the moon isn't still waxing and that it's not still a time where we can maximize on that waxing energy. So let's pull some spiritual advice that we have coming through for this particular card here. And then also for the moon phase specifically. Right here. Okay. All right, Leo. So I'm not going to make this too long talking about the astrology, but I do want to mention a couple of things just so that you're aware. So on April 19th, we have the new moon and the solar eclipse happening at 9:13 p.m. Pacific. That's happening in Aries. It's happening in Aries, both in tropical and sidereal, which doesn't always happen. Usually they're one sign apart most of the time. So when it's happening in the same sign like this, I really feel like the energy is really pure and like very accentuated, right? And so so that's one, is that we have that, and it happens to also, this eclipse new moon happens to also be squaring Pluto. So I'll come back around to that as we move through your reading. I just want to mention a couple of these transits at the beginning. So then we also have on April 21st, we have Mercury going retrograde in the wee hours of the morning. So it's at 1:35 a.m. Pacific time. Everything that I talk about is on Pacific time. And that is in Taurus in tropical astrology, and it is in Aries in sidereal astrology. So if you're not familiar with sidereal, don't worry about it. If you watch like horoscopes and people talk about astrology, unless they specifically say that they're doing sidereal astrology, what you're listening to is tropical astrology. So it's like the majority of what people actually talk about. So just, leave it there if you don't know what sidereal is. We're not going to get into it in this video. So with that, let's take a look first at the first card, and then I'll kind of expand on some of what I'm talking about and how it relates to the cards. So we're sticking with this particular deck where we've been looking at, because it's a collective reading, to try and help narrow down like what this reading is specifically pointing towards, like what it's actually about. We're like an area of life or a theme. We're taking a look at this particular card. And so what's coming up for you is Aries. So how interesting, because we've got all of this Aries energy. It's an Aries new moon. It's an Aries solar eclipse, no matter which astrological system you're in. And what is Aries? Aries is like very combustible type of energy, right? It's like cardinal, it's a burst, it's like spark. It's fire, it's passion, it's how like we do things and move forward in the world. It's that momentum, that forward moving energy. And Aries is also very closely related, because it's ruled by Mars, to like the energy of being like that warrior, right? also very passionate. So so this energy is like, I feel just kind of, for me, because it's not speaking to a specific area, like a house of life specifically, I feel like this is really talking about your action, your will, and how this is being highlighted for you with this particular, like, definitely I feel like it's highlighting the 19th, the new moon, and the energies of what's happening around the new moon and the eclipse for you, because it's all happening in Aries and it's showing up. So I feel like that's going to be significant for you in some way. And also, I will say, no, we'll come back around to that. Yeah. So let's just like pause it there and just say, okay. So like definitely the Aries energy feels like it's coming through. I'll say like, let's just see how that unfolds throughout from now, this new moon, until the full moon that's coming forward. Right. So, which is approximately 2 weeks, right? That's why I say it's like approximately bi-weekly, these readings. So I wanted to actually pull a card from a deck that I have that's a shadow deck, and it points to like what shadows we might be dealing with. You know, given that this is a collective reading, obviously it's not going to hit for every single Leo rising or Leo sun sign. However, I feel like if it's your message, it'll resonate. If it's not, and this is your sun sign, check out your rising. If you really want the specific, like real deal, like nitty gritty for you specifically, then you can book a private reading, and that's like information's in the box down below, right? So I'm taking a look at what's being brought forth with this eclipse energy, right? It's the beginning of something. It's not just from this new moon to full moon. Like this is the beginning of eclipse season until May 5th is the next eclipse, right? And so it's this period of time that can feel really ripe. It can feel really intense. It's definitely a time of like really ushering things in, and like the universe also, like the tide, it ushers things out as well. And so there is this kind of energy that comes through where that's why people kind of tend to get nervous around the eclipses, because it's like, what's going to start? What's going to end? I don't know. And also it's when there is the eclipsing of the energy, or the eclipsing of the light, it casts shadows, right? It's like it becomes shadowy. And so the world of shadows, the things that we kind of sweep away into the corners of our mind, especially because it's squaring, this particular one is squaring Pluto. So more so like the things that we tend to sweep under the rug, the things that are in the recesses of our psyche, the things that we don't tend to want to really look at that are uncomfortable, the shadows that we have, and we all have them, multiple, right? So because of that energy being a part of what can come up and what we can work with, let's remember this is something that we can choose to reframe and work with, instead of feeling like it's happening to me or it's bringing things up, you know, and putting them in my face, right? So this particular card from this shadow deck is about atonement is one way. I actually see this card a little bit differently than just atonement, but yes, so this atonement card is coming up. And I feel like in some ways that might be feeling like trying to, like when we're trying to atone for quote unquote our sins, right? When there's that energy of trying to atone for our sins, I think that there is a danger of us taking it too far, of being like the overly sacrificial lamb, and feeling like we have to take on the full burden, the full responsibility to a level that's like unfair, that is to a degree that's like we're taking on things that are not necessarily ours to take on. And that's not really like the energy that we need to have with like atonement, right? Like accepting the pain is a way to survive, like in some ways, but we don't need to come from this place of like survival energy, especially with all that Pluto energy that's there, right? So you know, that's just, you know, something that I want to kind of like bring about, right? It's like there is this kind of light side to atonement, but there's also this dark side to atonement. And I think that we need to make sure that we're not being like a martyr, or that we're not overly sacrificial and taking on too much, taking on everybody else's pain, taking on what isn't ours to take on out of wanting to people please or not cause waves or whatever it is, right? And so with that, the spiritual advice that's coming through is the Six of Pentacles. And I feel like this goes together with it really nicely, because what we're seeing here is that there needs to be an even distribution, a reciprocal energy between you and others, whether that's between you and a partner, friends, coworkers on a project, like who's taking on the load more or what, despite whether like you've made mistakes that you need to atone for instance, like just because you've made mistakes doesn't mean that you need to take on everything that is, that the other, like take on everything for everyone, right? Or take on everything that they did. Like it doesn't mean it erases other people's mistakes. Just because you made a mistake, you don't have to like erase theirs with like your guilt or your desire to like make things all right. So making sure that things are balanced, right? Making sure that the time, energy, and attention, right? Because it's not just money that needs to be like balanced in the give and take, right? But this is about balancing the give and take in terms of like our time, attention, our energy, and maybe even our finances, right? Making sure that that is even and fair and balanced, and that you're not taking on too much of this, right? And I feel like that goes together pretty clearly. And then when we take a look at, it's interesting because just like more swords, or no, I'm sorry, wands, but it looks like swords from this angle. So what we have down here we're looking at the new moon. So for the new moon to the full moon, we have energy that is waxing and building. Despite the fact that we have some pretty intense astrology that's happening on the 19th, and then we also have Mercury going retrograde. A lot of people are scared of Mercury retrograde. Really, it depends on like where it's hitting your house. I'm actually going to do a reel and put it up on Instagram. So if you're not following me, follow me over there. But I'm going to put it up so that you guys can just like know how to look in your chart and see like what area of your life is this solar eclipse impacting? What area of your life is like the Mercury retrograde impacting? And just because we have those things happening in astrology doesn't mean that we can't work with the building, waxing energy of this new to full moon. It just means we need to work with it in a different way. My suggestion would be to like let it kind of chill out after the eclipse and maybe wait until the weekend. I know that will be after Mercury retrograde has already begun. So if you really don't feel comfortable with that, maybe do it on the 20th with all of your intention setting and whatnot. But I'd say you can even do it on the weekend. Like, just because Mercury retrograde is happening doesn't mean you can't do things. We still got to live our lives. So, and you can still work with this energy. It's just take the time to slow it down, double, triple check things, like make sure that what you're asking for is like really truly what you want, that you're really clear about things, right? When you're setting your intentions or doing any kind of like maybe ritual, ceremony, spell work type things, that you take the time to like slow it down and go in more intentionally so that it's really clear. That's all it really means, really. And so when we're looking at like how we're going to work with this energy, we see the 9 of Wands for what's being pointed out about planting seeds. I'm going to say that this feels for some reason like it's more about health for you. Definitely the 9 of Wands is kind of like the well-seasoned warrior that is, has to continue, like the battles aren't over. They have to like still soldier on, right? And I don't feel like that is particularly like the entirety of like the meaning here. This card also represents taking care of our health, prioritizing our health. And I feel like during this particular time with the eclipse season, like this is a time where it's like we need to put our self-care at the top of the list so that we have reserve energy, because whether something crazy happens or not, hopefully not, right? But like if some really surprising situations happen, things that you didn't necessarily see coming, it's going to take energy, like your emotional energy, your physical energy, like mental energy to deal with like that and the rest of your life, right? And so even if nothing happened, it would still be like it's intense energy and it's probably going to be felt anyway. So it's just just good to have, like, build up your bank, like build up your reserves, drink plenty of water, make sure you're getting enough rest, enough sleep, right? Try to manage your stress levels, like do those kinds of things, like eat good food, blah, 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 right? So with that, we have like the spirit, and this is like what your like guides are saying to, I'm seeing a smudge there. This is what your guides are saying to focus on for this particular cycle, right? So is like focus on your health, right? And also the spiritual advice that we're seeing here is like, you know, at the same time, there needs to be this kind of flexibility with the stability that you have acquired in your life. So whatever level of stability you've been able to acquire, that's awesome, but life shifts and it doesn't just stay the same. No matter how much we want to hold tightly to the moment or how things are, we want them to like stay the same. They're not always going to remain the same. And so this is not a time to be like holding on too tightly. There needs to be some flexibility and understanding that life is going to shift and change whether we want it to or not. And there can be some resistance, especially around eclipse season. So I think that this is a time to make sure that you're watching yourself. Like that can cause a lot more stress too, is just holding on too tightly. So that's what I'm seeing here for you, Leo. And I would say, you know, this is I feel like a pretty clear reading. At least it feels clear to me. Like I don't know exactly which area of your life this is referring to, but it feels pretty clear. If you want to maybe get a bigger picture, I would say check out your April reading, and I'll have that up here on the screen. So yeah, that's what I've got for you. You can book a private reading down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.